The power of the next Xbox has been revealed. What's up, y'all, and welcome to Xbox Ready, my YouTube channel that is all about Xbox, and I'm back with another video with Mr. Jimmy Champagne, no G, to talk the latest Xbox news, keep you up to date with what's going on in that world to make sure that you are Xbox ready. So one of the big things going on for Xbox right now is the upcoming release of these new partner devices that they've been working with Asus on, the Xbox Ally and the Xbox Ally X. They revealed them back in June. A handful of people got to go hands-on with them back then. And then they had this big presence at Gamescom where part of the booth was people getting to demo the Xbox Ally X, I think, specifically. I don't know if the white one, the Xbox Ally, was out on the floor, but for sure the Xbox Ally X. And Digital Foundry was part of that group of people that got to go hands-on with it, heard of them, and they detailed kind of what their experience was, what they thought was good and bad about these upcoming Xbox consoles. And so far, it's looking like a mixed bag. Apparently, they were pretty impressed from the hardware standpoint, but right off the bat, they had issues with the software. Richard said it's a very rich and fully featured interface. It can do things that other interfaces can't, but at the same time, let's put it brutally, I found some pretty glaring bugs with the interface literally within minutes of picking it up. The first bug I had was with Doom: The Dark Ages. The second time I had issues, the analog sticks stopped working within the interface, which was obviously making navigation difficult on site. Microsoft staff had to step in to get the unit working again. The third issue I had was something quite different. I was playing Gears Reloaded. I went back to the Xbox full screen experience, then loaded Doom: The Dark Ages. It didn't ask me whether I wanted to terminate Gears Reloaded, so it went ahead and loaded Doom while Gears was still resonant in memory, which hammered performance, which is exactly what happens if you try to launch a game from another launcher on just the regular ROG Ally.
The issue where it can run multiple apps at the same time, I think that's more user, like if you do that, you're kind of out of your depth when it comes to using this thing, right? Because like the Steam Deck can do that. I do it all the time with Discord, where like I added Discord to Steam and then I can open it as a game technically and run it in the background, and then you can switch between it. That's more of a feature and less than a bug, but yeah, that all makes sense. When the Steam Deck came out, SteamOS wasn't up to par. It had a lot of issues with the same type of stuff, like games would crash. The interface would slow things down. If you downloaded games in the background while you were playing a game, it would tank performance. So there's a learning curve for sure, but this isn't really surprising because, you know, they made this quick, right? Like this is something new that they've been working on probably for most of 2025 at most. So expecting it to be ironed out at launch. They're also only launching it on one device. So it's clear that they want to like get a small sample pool to see how people are using it so they can improve features that people are actually using and probably take features out that people aren't. But yeah, I mean, like this just kind of lends itself to Microsoft's strategy of not talking about this thing enough, where they're going to just throw it out there. And I feel like they're going to hit wall after wall with like the price, the performance, the two different SKUs. All this stuff is going to be, well, let's save it for after launch. And I don't think that's the smartest decision because this is a big jump from an Xbox to something like this.
Going back to the launching one game and the other game is still running in the background, that's, you know, obviously not the end of the world, but if you're thinking about the console-only audience, at this point through Gen 9, especially on the Xbox side, people are used to quick resume and games being suspended, apps being suspended when you open up something that's going to hog up a lot of memory.
Oh yeah, there's like that feature built in. So if you're playing Doom: The Dark Ages and then switch to Gears Reloaded, it suspends the first game in the background of the Xbox. It doesn't just like,
yeah, it's just put in the quick resume queue. Like we're not used to closing out games or quitting games entirely and then just jumping into the next one. Because we're spoiled at this point. And so if the idea is that I hope like console guys really adopt this and buy the Xbox Ally when this comes out, that's something that would be a little bit of a learning curve for them. And that's something that Digital Foundry also kind of touched on too. They said if you're going to be booting booting this machine up and you're expecting an Xbox, I think you're going to be a bit disappointed. It's a launcher that's quite richly featured, but I think right now that it isn't an Xbox, despite what Xbox marketing might be telling us. And then past that, they decided to test the performance of 2 games from what I've seen so far. Doom the Dark Ages being one of them, and Expedition 33. And I want to get your take on this because on paper, their targets and what they were able to achieve in both of these games don't really seem all that great, especially if you're coming from, playing on console only. But I wanted to get your take on this, Jimmy, as the master of all things gaming handheld. So they were apparently reaching targets of they were able to touch 50 FPS on low settings, 540p upscale to about 1080p in performance mode on Doom the Dark Ages. And apparently Expedition 33 not doing nearly as hot. They were hovering around sub 30 FPS and really struggling with that 1080p resolution.
Yeah, and Doom the Dark Ages, that kind of makes sense because that game forces ray tracing. So there's a huge performance overhead you have to take into account. With Expedition 33, that is surprising because you can get 30 FPS on the Steam Deck, but that's one of my biggest issues with every handheld that's come out, whether it's the Legion Go, the ROG Ally, or now this one. There's no reason for these things to have 1200, 1600, 1080p screens because pushing games to that resolution is always going to be a big problem unless you're playing something like Silksong, like a smaller 2D game. That won't have a problem with 1080p. But once you get into modern 3D stuff or Unreal Engine 5, it just doesn't make sense. You're using a laptop chip effectively to try and push to a TV resolution screen, or a little less than that, but mostly a TV resolution screen. That's why the Steam Deck's 800p. It's not bad. It's actually a good thing because that's a little bit over 720p, and that's a lot more feasible for the chips that are inside these things. And if you use the internal resolution on SteamOS to set it lower to 720 or 800, these chips clean up. They dominate the Steam Deck. If you ran Doom the Dark Ages with the same settings at 720 or 800p, it'd probably be at 70, 80 FPS, where on the Steam Deck, you have to do that and you're barely touching 30. And people are going to point out that the Switch 2 is 1080p, but the Switch 2 is an NVIDIA chip, so it can use DLSS. And if DLSS does a infinitely better job than the latest generation of FSR or even XeSS, and it's proprietary to NVIDIA chips. So the Switch can upscale from 560p, going from 568 all the way up to 1080p is going to look a lot worse on the ROG Ally using FSR than it would on the Switch 2 using DLSS. It's just a way better technology. So upscaling in general is annoying because every time they add a new feature, it's mainly built for old machines, right? It's oh, if you're still using a 4060, right? We've introduced FSR that can drop all the way down to 560p and upscale it to 1080 for you, and you'll get better frames. But then developers see it and they go, oh, we don't have to optimize our game. So even if you have a 5090 with stuff like Metal Gear Solid Delta, you have to use FSR. You can't play that game natively and get a locked 60 FPS. So it becomes a crutch for developers, and that's for high-end hardware. So then when you're scaling all the way down to a handheld like this, the feature was initially made for a handheld like this, but it can't compete because developers are using it as a crutch.
And one of the elephants in the room about the Xbox Ally and its more expensive older brother, the Xbox Ally X, is the price. We haven't heard any details about the pricing, which, considering it's supposed to come out in October, it's a little worrying. Specifically, people are worried that we're going to see, especially the Xbox Ally, hover around $900, maybe even $1,000. We don't know yet. As the more time goes by, the more people get to speculate and worry, and that anxiety builds. And it makes me a little worried because this thing is obviously an enthusiast console, a niche console. People who watch Digital Foundry, so if the Digital Foundry crew, they're they're saying it's more of a mixed bag, it's more of a work in progress. I'm a little worried with how it's gonna perform with its intended audience, or what I think is the intended audience.
I agree, because for someone who plays on PC a lot, this is only good, right? All this work they're doing to make the full screen platform is going to make it easier for someone who already plays on PC to use their PC on the TV with a controller. So that's a net win overall for them. But if that's the only people who adopt this, you put all this time, energy, and money into supporting an audience that already exists, and you're not growing it. So I think they need to figure out how to make this app work exactly like an Xbox before they let it get out past the ROG Ally Xbox X, whatever you want to call it, so that if and when people who have Xboxes switch over, it's as close to the Xbox experience as they can get, not an entirely new platform that looks like an Xbox, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's almost there, you know, and that's what I really am hoping for going into the future, like a universal thing that looks the same on cloud, on the Ally, on your console. Yeah, and it just seems like the opposite of what we've been seeing them do over the past couple of years, especially with their push in cloud gaming. They're like, yeah, this is like a relatively low investment for us. We got to make sure that the Xbox app is compatible with, you know, the LG interface, with the Amazon Fire Stick. Yeah, we'll like make a bundle, like put a controller and sell that with the Amazon stick. Sure, why not? This seems like a way bigger gamble, you know, investing in not only the full screen interface, but who knows like what they're contributing in the hardware portion with what Asus is doing. And for cloud gaming, if people don't use the Xbox app or whatever, I feel like it's no skin off of Xbox's nose, but it feels kind of like if this doesn't perform well, it's gonna be a different story.
Yeah, because they're kind of committed at this point. Like they're gonna rebuild Windows to be better for gaming if you want to install it, right? Like there's a lot of Xbox handheld PCs out there technically with the Legion Go 2, ROG Ally, ROG Ally X, the white ROG Ally with the regular Z1. Like there's so many different handhelds that they've promised this is coming to. So, I mean, it's a long-term thing. I don't think this is something that's going to work out overnight, especially when the overall operating system and how an Xbox works is benefiting from 2 generations of building the operating system, because the Series X uses the same sort of interface and operating system as the One X and One. So, like they're trying to build a new audience while also trying to convince their current audience to switch over. And they're definitely leaning more in favor of the new audience, which, like, I don't know. I think that they kind of rushed this at a time when they have to rush, but it would have been more beneficial to actually take their time on it, you know?
You know what's interesting is that through all of this talk about the Xbox Ally, last week these rumors came out about the PlayStation 6 and their next generation lineup, including a handheld that would play first-party games natively, not like the PC versions of those games, but like PlayStation games straight up, which makes me think like, part of me wishes that instead of the Xbox Ally X, which is cool when I got to try it myself, and I'm sure it will be cool when I ultimately end up caving and buying it, but part of me wishes that we saw first the first party Xbox handheld that people have been talking about for years at this point, especially if these rumors turn out to be true, because I feel like that's a much easier sell. Say, hey, you know, our existing console base, we're going to go into the handheld space, and by the way, all of your games are going to be supported on this new handheld that we're putting out, versus like this kind of confusing marketing that they got going on.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot, really, because they're competing with the exact same enemy, right? Like on the handheld side, Xbox versus PlayStation, you're competing with people who built up a huge PlayStation library, so why would they subscribe to Game Pass, right? And then on the PC side, you're competing with people who have a massive Steam library, so why would they subscribe to Game Pass? They'll just choose to not play Xbox games before they switch their entire library over to the Game Pass side of the fence. You know, like they got to find something new to do. And it seems like they're kind of in the right direction when it comes to PC, like supporting that interface and ecosystem. But I feel like abandoning the console one is just dumb. Like they've been working on the internal handheld for so long. If they could have shipped it before PlayStation, that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's a real thing, like going where your library is already built up. The other day I did a video about the new tab that they got going on. It's just like a recently played games like little icon that it's like a separate like app group. And I was going, it's like that's going to be the same on your console, on your PC, on cloud gaming. And when I was doing my video, I was like, oh, here are my most recently played games on Xbox. And they were the same, like they were saying, across the other parts of the ecosystem, except for Helldivers 2, because it's not supported by Play Anywhere and it's not in the Microsoft storefront. So it's like, well, damn, if I wanted to play this on PC, if I wanted to play this on my Ally, I would have to rebuy the game on Steam. And it's like, well, shit, like maybe I should have just done that in the first place if I had known I was like, if I was going to get more devices for my money.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they kind of blocked that because on the PlayStation side, even if you buy it twice, your account doesn't transfer, which is annoying as hell because when the game came out and they did their PlayStation blog post, Arrowhead wrote it up and said that it had save transferring on launch, right? So I bought it on PS5 thinking I could just move between my TV and my PC, and then I boot it up and I'm starting over, and they're like, they have not added that, and they're being wishy-washy about if they're ever going to do it at all. It's like, you should not have talked about it at all if you'd never planned on doing it.
So with the looming PlayStation 6 handheld, rumored handheld coming out, does that change Xbox plans? Or like you said earlier in the video, are they just going full steam ahead anyway and tinkering with Windows to make it better for gaming? How does that affect their plans going forward?
I think they need to think farther ahead in the future with everything they're doing right now. Like if they announce this Xbox ROG Ally as something that's for the existing Windows user base and said, this is for PC gamers, we're integrating what makes Xbox great for you so you can continue to play your games but have an Xbox flavor to them, and then they did the handheld for Xbox users, that would be great. But doing this thing, and then if they do a handheld that's like an Xbox and not a PC, then they're going to have to tell everyone who bought a $1,000 device, like, hey, just switch over to this and you'll get your Xbox games back. It's mixed messaging, and that's a huge benefit PlayStation has. They're targeting like a 50% lower price point for better performance than you're going to get out of the Xbox ROG Ally because it's coming out in 3 years. Like the price is what's a killer on all this stuff, because even the Legion Go 2, which uses the same chip as the Xbox ROG Ally but comes with an OLED screen, the base model of that is over $1,000, and the more expensive one's almost $1,300, I want to say. They got to figure out how to get the price points on these things reduced by 60% or 50% even. Like, it's ridiculous. It's totally killing the market before it can even get off the ground.
Anyways, guys, that's all the Xbox stuff we got to talk about today. Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Xbox Ready. Big shout out to Jimmy Champagne, No G, for joining us once again. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.